Los Angeles County, California, Venice Beach. Saturday afternoon, July 1971. The Pacific sun is burning straight overhead, throwing hard shadows across Muscle Beach, the legendary outdoor training ground where bodybuilders, strongmen, and serious athletes have gathered for generations to lift, compete, and prove what they're made of. The air carries salt water, sweat, and coconut oil. Everywhere you look, there's mass. Enormous arms working through curls and presses. Thick legs grinding through heavy squats. Chests built so wide they belong on ancient statues. This is the center of American strength culture, the birthplace of modern bodybuilding. The place where legends trained, where Dave Draper became famous, where men come to build bodies that go beyond natural human proportion. And walking along the beach path on this particular Saturday, holding his son Brandon's hand, while Linda carries little Shannon on her hip, is Bruce Lee. He's wearing simple clothes, loose cotton pants, a fitted shirt, sandals. No sunglasses, no security, no indication that he's anyone remarkable. Just a man spending a rare afternoon off with his family, enjoying the sun. Brandon is chasing seagulls down the path. Shannon is pointing at everything with that particular wonder only toddlers can manage. Bruce is smiling, relaxed, completely present. This is his day away from Enter the Dragon. No choreography to plan, no studio obligations, just warmth and family and the rhythm of waves hitting the shore. They pass Muscle Beach and Bruce pauses to watch. He was always drawn to different approaches to physical development, always studying what he could learn from people who trained differently than he did. He watches a bodybuilder pressing what looks close to 400 pounds off his chest. He watches a strongman pressing a dumbbell overhead with one arm, the kind of weight that would collapse most people entirely. And then he hears it, a voice. Loud, heavy, with the kind of confidence that comes from never truly being tested. Now that's what a real man looks like. Bruce doesn't react. The comment seems directed at the crowd in general, some guy performing for the audience gathered around the strongman demonstrations. But then the voice gets louder, and this time the direction is unmistakable. Not like these small guys walking around acting tough, just because they know a little karate. Bruce stops walking. Linda notices immediately and touches his arm, a quiet question. Bruce shakes his head. It's fine, but he turns toward the voice. The man is enormous, not bodybuilder enormous, strongman enormous. There's a meaningful difference. Bodybuilders shape their physiques for symmetry, for proportion, for visual impact. Strongmen build for one thing only, raw, crushing, overwhelming power. This man is the complete expression of that philosophy. He stands around 6'3" and weighs, as Bruce will soon learn, exactly 315 pounds. Not soft, not carrying excess, just massive in every direction. His arms are thicker than most people's thighs. His chest is a solid wall. His neck is so developed it looks like his head connects directly to his torso. He's in gym shorts only, his upper body open to the afternoon air, glistening with sweat, holding a loaded barbell carrying over 500 pounds. He's midway through a deadlift demonstration for the crowd gathered around him. His name is Kurt Wagner, not famous in any broad sense, but well known in California strength circles. He holds multiple state powerlifting records. He's competed in strongman events across the state. His deadlift approaches 750 pounds. His squat sits around 650. His bench is 500. He is a genuine, legitimate force of nature. And he is staring directly at Bruce Lee, with a smirk that tells the whole story about how he sees the world. Bruce hasn't responded. He's standing there holding Brandon's hand, watching this enormous man perform for the crowd, reading the situation the way he always did, quietly, thoroughly, without showing anything on his face. Linda leans close and says, "Let's just go." He's drunk or showing off or probably both. But before Bruce can answer, Kurt sets the barbell down on the platform with a crash that rattles the boards and walks toward them. Every step lands heavy and deliberate. The crowd instinctively shifts aside. When a man built like that moves with purpose, people get out of the way. He stops about 10 feet from Bruce. At this distance, the size difference is almost impossible to process. Kurt's forearm alone is wider than Bruce's midsection. One of Kurt's legs carries more weight than Bruce's entire body. "You hear me, small man," Kurt says, and the aggression is only barely dressed up as humor. "I said real men carry mass. Real strength comes from size. All that kung fu dancing you small guys do, that's just performance. The crowd has rotated. They're no longer watching the deadlift. They're watching this, sensing where it's heading, waiting to see how it plays out. Bruce looks at Kurt with an expression that gives away absolutely nothing. No anger, no embarrassment, no wounded pride, just calm observation. He's reading this man the way a scientist reads data, looking for what's actually driving the behavior beneath all the noise. "You're genuinely strong," Bruce says quietly, not a compliment designed to soften anyone, just a statement of fact. Kurt laughs, big and carrying. "Damn right, 315 of pure power. I can pull twice my own body weight off the floor. Can you do that?" "No," Bruce says simply. The answer throws Kurt off his stride. He was prepared for defensiveness, for ego, for someone to push back and give him something to work with. Agreement wasn't in the script. He pauses, recalibrates. "So you're admitting it." He pushes forward, trying to get back to familiar ground. "Size is what matters. Strength is what counts. A man your size, what are you, 140? 135, Bruce says. 135, Kurt announces to the crowd like he's delivering a verdict. "You see what I'm saying? 135 pounds of what exactly? That's not muscle. That's just lean. Real men carry mass." And here's the thing about moments like this one. They reveal something uncomfortable about the people watching them. Because every person standing in that crowd who stayed quiet, who waited to see which way the wind was blowing before deciding how to react, every one of them had that same insecurity buried somewhere underneath. The fear that maybe they'd built the wrong thing. That maybe the years they'd put into their body, into their identity, into their idea of what strength looked like, maybe none of it would hold up when something real came along. That fear doesn't announce itself. It hides under confidence and size and noise. But it was there in that crowd the same way it lives in most people who have ever tied their sense of worth to how they look or how much they can lift. Bruce has stayed completely composed through all of it, but now he does something no one expected. He smiles, not with sarcasm, not with challenge, just a quiet amusement, the expression of someone who's heard this argument so many times that it's become almost nostalgic. "You want to test the theory?" Bruce asks. Kurt's eyes sharpen. This is exactly what he was building toward. Test it how? Right here, a direct demonstration. You bring everything you have, all your mass, all your strength, use it however you want. I'll work with what I have. 6 seconds. We'll see what holds up. The crowd shifts and murmurs. Some people recognize Bruce now. That's the guy from the Green Hornet. That's the man who trained Steve McQueen, but most of the crowd just sees the math. A very small man has just challenged a very large man, and they're already running the numbers in their heads and reaching an obvious conclusion. Kurt looks around at the audience, playing to them. "I don't want to hurt you. I know what I'm capable of, and I'd rather not put you on the ground." "I appreciate that," Bruce says without any trace of irony. He means it. "But if we do this, you have to actually commit. No holding back because you're concerned about the weight difference. Use your full strength. Otherwise, we're not demonstrating anything real." "You're certain about this?" Kurt asks, and something subtle has shifted in his voice. Bruce's complete lack of anxiety about the situation is beginning to register somewhere underneath the bravado. 6 seconds, Bruce says. "Give me 6 honest seconds at full effort. After that, we'll have our answer." Kurt laughs, but it lands slightly flat this time. 6 seconds. I could put you straight through that platform in 6 seconds. "Then do it," Bruce says quietly. Linda has already moved the children back. She knows that look. She's seen it before, that particular stillness that comes over Bruce when he's decided to teach. He isn't angry, he isn't emotional, he's simply clear about what needs to happen. The crowd has nearly doubled now, perhaps 50 people. The other lifters and bodybuilders have stopped their sets and gathered at the edge of the platform. Word has traveled down the beach. Something is happening at Muscle Beach. One of the regular trainers steps forward to establish some kind of framework. "If we're doing this," someone said, "what are the rules?" Bruce looks at Kurt. "Your call, whatever you want to demonstrate, Come at me however you choose. Grab, strike, tackle, use your mass any way that feels natural. No rules, just 6 seconds of honest effort. Kurt rolls his shoulders back. His confidence is returning now, settling into familiar territory. He's used his size to end confrontations hundreds of times, in wrestling matches, in street situations, in every physical contest he's ever entered. No rules, Kurt confirms. 6 seconds. I'm going to lift you and put you down hard. Nothing personal, just proving the point. Nothing personal, Bruce agrees. The crowd falls quiet. Someone counts down from 3, and then it begins. Kurt moves fast for his size. He drives forward, arms wide, reaching for Bruce's torso. The strategy is textbook. Close the distance, wrap him up, and let the 180-pound advantage do the rest. Once those arms lock, it's finished. His hands close, on air. Bruce has shifted maybe 6 inches to his right. Not a dramatic leap, not a roll or a spin, just a slight angle change, precise and minimal, enough to make the entire grab miss cleanly. Kurt adjusts immediately, pivoting, extending again, faster this time, more aggressive. His hands are like steel traps. If they get purchase on anything, the physics take over immediately. Again, Bruce is simply not where Kurt is reaching. He has moved inside the bigger man's arms, close enough that Kurt can't generate any useful force from that range. 2 seconds have passed. Kurt changes approach. He throws a punch, not refined boxing technique, just a massive overhand right driven by 315 pounds of mass and momentum. If that lands anywhere, the conversation is over. Bruce's hand rises, not to block it, to intercept it. His fingers contact Kurt's wrist, and something happens that the crowd cannot immediately process. The punch, carrying enormous force, simply redirects. The energy scatters and dissipates. Kurt's arm passes wide. 3 seconds. And this is the moment Bruce strikes. It isn't a sequence. It isn't a combination. One single movement, delivered with the kind of specificity that years of understanding human anatomy produce. Bruce's fist travels from his side to the center of Kurt's torso in what appears to be no time at all. No wind-up, no telegraph, no visible preparation. One moment his hand is at rest, the next it has arrived. The sound carries across the beach, a sharp, dense impact that people standing 30 feet away can hear clearly. Kurt Wagner stops moving, his eyes go wide, his mouth opens, he tries to draw breath and cannot. His arms, which moments ago were reaching forward with genuine force, fall to his sides. He takes one step back, then another. Then his knees give and he sinks down onto the wooden platform, not crashing, not collapsing dramatically, just descending as if his legs have simply forgotten what they were built to do. 4 seconds. The crowd does not make a sound. 50 people, frozen, all of them saw it happen. All of them understand what they witnessed, but none of their brains are quite ready to accept the arithmetic of it. Bruce stands exactly where he was, breathing normally, his hand back at his side. He looks down at Kurt with no pride, no performance, no satisfaction, just patience, giving the lesson time to arrive. Kurt is on both knees, pressing both hands into his chest, working to pull air into a diaphragm that has stopped cooperating. His expression isn't pain exactly, it's bewilderment, raw, total bewilderment. He has taken full power shots from heavyweight boxers in sparring sessions. He has absorbed impacts that would put ordinary people in a hospital. This was entirely different. This went straight through his mass, as if all that muscle wasn't even a factor. 5 seconds. Bruce crouches down to meet Kurt at eye level. He speaks quietly, close enough that only those nearest the platform catch it. Your mass is real, your strength is legitimate, but strength without understanding is just force, and force without precision is just noise. Kurt pulls in one ragged breath, then another. His system is slowly reconnecting. 6 seconds. Someone in the back of the crowd breaks the silence. What just happened? This is the question that matters, not the 6 seconds themselves, but what they revealed. Because what happened next between these two men is where the actual story lives. Bruce stands up slowly and extends his hand to Kurt, not as a victor over a defeated opponent, as one serious person to another. Kurt stares at the offered hand for a long moment, then he takes it. Bruce pulls him to his feet, 315 pounds, upright again, but standing differently than he was 3 minutes ago. The crowd waits. In the strength world, public defeat typically demands a response. Ego requires it, but Kurt surprises everyone, including himself. He looks at Bruce and asks one word. Hold. Walk with me, Bruce says. Away from the crowd. I'll explain. They step off the platform and move down the beach path toward a quieter stretch of sand. The crowd watches them go, then slowly disperses, already beginning to process what they witnessed into the story they'll tell later. Linda takes the children to get ice cream, reading the situation correctly, giving Bruce room to do what he did better than almost anything else. They walk without speaking for about 30 seconds. Kurt moves carefully, taking inventory of his body, still feeling the effects of a single strike. Then Bruce stops, and they sit together on the low wall at the edge of the path. You said real men have mass, Bruce begins, and that's not incorrect. Mass carries power, size creates advantages. Everything you've built is legitimate. I'm not here to dismiss any of it. Kurt nods slowly. His defensiveness is completely gone. Whatever happened in those 6 seconds cleared it out entirely. But you've made mass your primary tool, Bruce continues. And when anything becomes your only approach, you become readable. Readable means exploitable. I've won every strength competition I've entered, Kurt says, not as a challenge, just as an honest statement. I've beaten men as big as me and bigger. Because they were operating in the same framework you were, Bruce responds, mass against mass. It's like 2 trucks hitting each other head-on. The heavier vehicle wins, but what happens when the other vehicle doesn't drive into you at all? What happens when they step to the side? Kurt touches his chest again. That strike. I've been hit before. I've sparred with serious boxers. That felt like something different entirely. Yes, Bruce confirms, because I didn't strike your muscle. I struck through it. Your solar plexus sits approximately 3 inches beneath the surface. A standard punch impacts the outer layers and the force spreads across the tissue. The muscle absorbs it. But when you generate force that travels as a focused line rather than spreading on contact, when you understand kinetic linking from the ground through the legs, through the hips, through the core, through the shoulder and into the fist, the force doesn't spread. It drives straight through to the target. Your nervous system experienced direct disruption. That's why your breathing stopped. Not because the strike was powerful in the traditional sense, because it was precise. Kurt absorbs this. This is information that exists nowhere in his powerlifting manuals or his strongman training programs. An entirely different vocabulary about what the body can do. So technique overrides strength, he says. No, Bruce corrects him immediately. That's too simple. Technique properly applied can overcome strength in specific circumstances, but only if the technique is truly refined. Most martial techniques are overcomplicated. Too many moving parts, too much setup time, which gives someone your size the opening they need to close distance and make everything academic. What I used was the simplest possible expression of directed force. No decoration, no telegraph, just intention arriving at the target before your body could process the signal to respond. Could you teach me to do that? Kurt asks. There's nothing small about the question, it's direct and genuine. I can teach you the principles, Bruce says, but first, something has to shift in how you understand your own body. Your mass is a tool, one tool among several. In certain situations, your size is an overwhelming asset. Against multiple opponents, in a grappling context, in any scenario where strength can be directly applied, 315 pounds is an enormous advantage. But against a single trained opponent who understands angles, timing, and precise application of force, mass can become a liability. It's weight you have to carry, momentum you have to manage. It makes course corrections slower and predictable patterns harder to break. Kurt sits with this. He's spent years building himself into what he is. He's constructed an identity around the numbers, the plates on the bar, the records on the board, the physical reality of what his body can do. And now someone is telling him that same architecture under certain conditions, creates vulnerabilities he never considered. But he can't argue against it. The argument ended 4 minutes ago on a wooden platform in front of 50 witnesses. "Do you take students?" Kurt asks. Bruce studies him for a moment. He's reading something more than physical capability. He's asking whether this man's sense of himself is flexible enough to be rebuilt, whether someone who has dominated every room he's ever entered can walk into one where he's the least skilled person there and stay humble enough to actually learn. "I have a school in Los Angeles," Bruce says. "What I teach isn't a style, it's a set of principles. Efficiency, directness, the minimum effective technique. No classical forms, no traditional rituals, just what actually works. I call it Jeet Kune, the way of the intercepting fist." "Can I come?" "Yes," Bruce says, "but you need to understand what you're walking into. Training there means accepting that your current understanding of fighting is incomplete. Not wrong, incomplete. The question is whether you can sit in that space after a career of being the most formidable person in any room." Kurt is quiet for a moment, then he says, "After today, yes, I think I can do that." They shake hands. This grip is different from the first two. Not confrontation, not a rescue. This is the handshake between a teacher and someone ready to become a student. Word of what happened moves through California's strength community within days. Every version of it circulates. A 135-pound martial artist dropped a 315-pound strongman in 6 seconds with a single strike. The reactions break along predictable lines. A portion of people dismiss it outright. Exaggerated, lucky, not what it sounds like. Another group find themselves genuinely curious about this Bruce Lee and the system he's built. But the 50 people who were actually standing at Muscle Beach that afternoon don't debate it. They watched it happen. They know what they saw. And this is the part that nobody says out loud, but everyone quietly carries afterward. Because if 315 pounds of documented, record-holding, legitimate strength can be neutralized in 6 seconds by a 135-pound man with the right understanding, then what does that say about everything any of us have been measuring ourselves against? What does it say about the thing you've been building yourself into? The identity you've constructed around being the biggest, the strongest, the most? That quiet question is the uncomfortable part. That's the one that follows you home. Kurt Wagner shows up at Bruce's school the following week. The other students, most of them well under 200 pounds, watch this mountain of a man come through the door and have no idea what to make of it. Bruce introduces him simply as a new student and makes it clear that physical size carries no rank in this room. Kurt struggles at first. His body has been trained to express power in specific directions, through specific patterns. Unlearning those grooves is harder than building them was. He's accustomed to his size, creating space for error. Now he's working in a system where error is immediately visible, where efficiency is non-negotiable, where mass counts for nothing if the movement isn't clean. But he doesn't quit, and slowly, across months of consistent training, something real develops, not a replacement for what he already had, an addition to it. He retains his strength, continues his powerlifting practice, keeps competing in strongman events, but now there's something else running alongside it. Precision, the ability to read what's happening rather than just reacting to it. A sense of timing that 315 pounds had never required before. Year after Venice Beach, Kurt competes again, and the people who know him notice something has changed. He isn't winning differently because he's stronger. He's winning because he's more efficient. He positions better, he wastes less. He reads his opponents instead of just overpowering them. Other competitors start asking what changed in his training. When he tells them he's been working with Bruce Lee, several of them laugh. A martial artist teaching a strongman, the whole thing sounds backwards. But the ones who are serious, the ones paying attention to results rather than categories, ask for more details. And gradually, through no particular campaign, Bruce's approach begins spreading through a community that had always operated by entirely different rules. Years later, after Bruce Lee is gone, Kurt Wagner is interviewed for a documentary about the development of American martial arts. The interviewer asks about the Venice Beach encounter, asks whether the story has grown with retelling, whether the details have been stretched over time. Kurt thinks about it carefully before he answers. Then he says, I can only tell you what my body experienced. I was 315 pounds. I could move more weight than anyone I knew. I had built my entire understanding of physical capability around the idea that mass was the primary variable. Then Bruce Lee touched me, and I used that word deliberately because it wasn't a full punch by any reasonable definition, and my body just stopped working. Everything I thought I understood about strength became irrelevant inside of 6 seconds. The interviewer asks whether he believes size still matters in a real confrontation. Size matters, Kurt says, strength matters, but understanding matters more than either of them. And if you're facing someone who has genuinely studied combat at a foundational level, someone who understands anatomy and physics and the mechanics of human movement the way Bruce understood them, then your size can actually create problems for you. You're carrying weight that costs you time. You're managing momentum that makes your movements readable. You're protected by muscle that can be bypassed if someone knows precisely where and how to direct force. Do you still train? The interviewer asks. Every day, Kurt says, but differently. I still lift, I still compete, but I also train in Jeet Kune. I study efficiency, I work on reading people. Bruce gave me something that day at Venice Beach that I hadn't been looking for. He gave me a reason to stay humble. And humility turns out to be the only foundation that actually holds weight under real mastery. The Venice Beach encounter becomes one of those stories that moves through martial arts schools and strength gyms and Hollywood circles for decades, picking up different details depending on who's telling it. Some versions have Bruce knocking Kurt unconscious. Other versions say nothing remarkable happened at all. But the people who were actually there, standing on that beach on a Saturday afternoon in July 1971, they carry a specific memory that doesn't need embellishment. They watched mass meet precision. They saw strength encounter understanding. And they witnessed the exact moment when someone who had built an entire identity around physical dominance discovered that there was an entirely different category of capability he had never accounted for. Bruce never talked about that day as a victory. When the subject came up, he would redirect it. I demonstrated a principle, he would say. The demonstration was successful. The student was open to learning. That's the only measure worth keeping. But with close students in private, he would return to that afternoon as an example of everything he believed about why he had moved past classical martial arts. Classical systems have beauty, he would say. They carry history and cultural meaning, but they are often built around complexity when simplicity is more honest. At Venice Beach, he would tell them, I didn't use a style. I saw an opening. I filled it with force. No decoration, no ceremony. Just direct expression of power to the right target. That is what Jeet Kune actually means, not a system of techniques to memorize, a commitment to being direct. A commitment spread far beyond one afternoon and one student. Other athletes who heard the story began asking harder questions about their own training. What assumptions had they built into their bodies that they'd never tested? What else might they be wrong about? Some found their way to Bruce directly. Others started exploring on their own. But the seed was in the ground. The idea that mass and strength, as real and as valuable as they are not the complete picture. That something is missing if understanding isn't part of the equation. That is Bruce Lee's actual legacy, not the films, not the cultural moment, not the famous demonstrations. The legacy is the shift in thinking, the understanding that mastery requires the willingness to be wrong about what you know, that strength is incomplete without wisdom attached to it, that the most powerful thing you can carry into any room isn't in your body at all. On a Saturday afternoon in July 1971, on a beach in California, that lesson took 6 seconds to deliver. 6 seconds that told 315 pounds of genuine strength, that the measurement it had been using was missing a variable, and that the variable was everything.